My daughter's father sent a priest to harass me, by user single mom. I had no intentions to do a new post, but today absolutely took the cake. To those that don't know, my daughter, 6yo, was born from a one-night stand with Jeff. We were never romantically involved. It was a simple one-night stand and we did use contraceptives, but they failed. It happens. A few months ago Jeff went full psycho and tried to convince me to leave my daughter with him so she could serve as a replacement child for his wife who recently lost their infant daughter. I refused and right now we're in the middle of some legal issues. Now for today, I thankfully didn't deal with Jeff. Instead he sent a priest to harass me at work. I'm going to be very blunt, I am completely detached from religion. I'm not an atheist, just don't really like the idea of the Catholic Church, that's the leading religion in my home country. I respect it and most of my family is Catholic so I have a detached respect for church officials. Today I was doing some paperwork when I got a call about a priest asking for me. I didn't have any meetings scheduled and a lot of times we get visits from clergy asking for donations or participation in events, so I figured that was it. I told the secretary to let him in and things at first seemed rather polite. Shake hands, asking how things were. The usual chit-chat. Then the priest began talking about how it had come to his attention that I was a single woman with a child, and that apparently I lived a life of debauchery and hate. His words. I was taken aback and agreed I was a single mother, but that I didn't see how I lived in debauchery and hate. The priest then went on about how he knew my daughter is prohibited from spending time with her father and that I'm constantly sleeping around with men instead of living a godly life. How he was worried and thought it would be best I considered giving my daughter a chance to live with a proper family rather than see me sell myself. Angry was an understatement. I did keep it civil simply because I was at work and I had no intentions of screaming to a religious man at work. I simply told him that my daughter was fine with me, she lived a safe and happy life, my personal affairs were my own, and that I had no intentions of sending her to another household. I told him that if there was nothing else, he should probably leave as I had other things to attend to. He then showed his hand and that's how I know it was Jeff's doing. The priest told me he didn't think my daughter would be a happy child with me, but her father was well respected in his church and he knew he would raise a proper Christian lady. At that I laughed, and simply said no. I once again recommended he left and if he didn't, I would be calling security. He left saying he would try to speak to me again when I'm not being hysterical. I told my secretary and our security not to let him into my office again. And I called my lawyer. I don't have audio, but we do have security feed from him walking into my office. Thank you again to everyone sending well wishes in my previous post. We are still working on that move, but school is back and she's loving it. We still have that temporary restraining order against Jeff and his wife. And school officials know it. Update, my parents want to give my sister the earrings my grandma left to me, by user Miserable Piglet 847. This is old but I keep receiving messages every once in a while asking for an update. Yes, I got the earrings. After my post I went to my parents' house, opened the safe, took the earrings and left. Then after that I went again, told my parents I need time to process stuff and be my own self and gave their house's keys, said I was leaving for good. There was some tears from my mom saying she couldn't believe I was such a bitter person, she raised me better, I was turning my back to my family over nothing and finally that it was shameful that I would let the family house without being married or anything. So it was never about me or she loving me or anything but social pressure to keep an outdated tradition. My dad was very neutral, gave me a hug and wished me luck. For 2 months nothing happened and I barely have contact with my family, found a place to live, tried to heal, have real fun decorating my new home, your normal stuff. And then everything happened at once. For those 2 months my sister and mom never reached to me, only my dad sent a text once a week asking how I was and wishing I was doing well. And then my sister's boyfriend / future husband / also my ex started to follow me on Instagram again. I found it weird but anyway after all he's my sister's boyfriend / father of my niece / future brother-in-law / my ex FWB. He started to like my stories and the replying to them with hearth emojis and looking good smiling face with heart-shaped eyes. This happened 3 times maybe. When I received the voicemail from my mom calling all sort of names for going after a man that I knew was engaged, this was some kind of revenge over my poor sister, that I was causing her so much stress her blood pressure level was over moon. I was an inconsiderate femme fatale and she raised me better. Later I learned through a cousin that my sister took her friend's cell phone and found several conversations with several women including his attempts to talk to me, so of course she went to my mom crying about me trying to steal her fence. All messy tbh. Less than a week later another voicemail from mom asking me where the earrings. She went looking after them and when she couldn't find them deduced it was me. She called me a thief. A disgrace. Dishonored me and said they didn't consider me family anymore. I was dead to them. And she will be taking legal actions against me for thief if it was possible. I had no option but to block her and my sister and other family members that sided with them. My dad later texted me to let me know my mom went nuts and they won't take any legal action. By the end of last month my cousin texted me saying my sister had given birth to my niece. I know I shouldn't but I did it. I went to the hospital with a gift while wearing my beautiful and fancy earrings. I was kicked out, of course, but it was worth of it. I have no plans to see them ever again. Well, maybe my dad. Also my cousin, big gossiper, that girl, let me know my sister is getting married in May so she will have her happy ever after all. But I'm also living my best life RN. Dr. Yes, I got the earrings. A mom got mad at me because I wouldn't let her kid play with an expensive prop, by user no pomegranate 4794. I'm just done with entitled parents raising the future entitled sect of the next generation. I work in entertainment and one of the shows I'm in offers backstage tours. I was walking around when I passed by a group taking a tour. At that moment they were looking at some of our props, including one of the ones I used during the show. That prop costs roughly around $4,000, and that's considered one of the cheaper props we have. I saw a kid eyeing my prop and his mom said, "Yeah, you can touch it and hold it." I quickly stepped forward and go, "Excuse me, I'm sorry but please don't touch any of the props." Entitled mom, "But I promised my son he could." Me, "I'm sorry but these are very expensive and delicate." Entitled mom, emphasis heavily, "But I promised my son." I don't do well with confrontation so I just kind of stood there smiling and with pleading eyes found the tour guide who thankfully noticed that I was not having a pleasant conversation and stepped in. She threw a big stink about her kid not being able to play. My dad showed up an hour early and then stood me up on our actual lunch time, by user schizophrenic mom. This might be a small thing, but it still made me so frustrated I, 39F, actually cried. There is a history of him not respecting my time and prioritizing social events with his crew of varyingly questionable buddies instead of time with me and my brother. Dad and his so were coming for coffee and a bite to eat Saturday at 1200. Instead of arriving more or less on time like a normal human, he rolled up almost an entire hour before at 1110. He rang the doorbell once. I was out of earshot in the basement, as was my husband. He was in the shower, and we were not expecting people for 50 damn minutes. Dad did not call or indicate that he had been at our place at all. They proceeded to leave and go shopping. At 12 they rang us up from the shops. Instead of coming back to our house at the actual time of our social call, they tried to call me up to see if we were awake yet. At that exact moment our plumber, a friendly neighbor, had dropped by to discuss our small bathroom reno. Friendly plumber was in for 15 minutes. I rang up my dad immediately after FP left as I expected Dad was just letting us know he was a little delayed. Instead he had turned back. He was 15 minutes into his hour drive back home and didn't want to turn the car around to have coffee/lunch because he had food in the car and had other things to do that day. It was 1215 and he was supposed to be at our house 1200. A catastrophic delay, certainly. Meanwhile my husband had baked bread and I had prepared the house for guests in the middle of a renovation. I just feel disrespected, discarded and right at the bottom of his list of priorities. And insulted. Instead of "Sorry we were early, it's you should turn your doorbell volume up and we assumed you were sleeping." Instead of delaying his schedule by 30 minutes so he could drive back and have the coffee/lunch we had prepared, it's "I have other things to do today. Please tell me I'm not the crazy one." Edit, a few words for clarification. My mom hates me and my brother, by user mkfee. So let's begin this with backstory. My mom was a really great mom, but she started changing little by little into this witch of a person. She was very loving and affectionate. Now she tells to me and my brother's face that she hates us. Most recent example, today, the day I'm writing this. She berated my brother for not being hungry at breakfast, then after a brief silence turned to my father and shouted, "I want a divorce." Then she proceeds to, and I'm not kidding, curse his entire bloodline, including me and my brother, say she hopes my grandma, Dad's mom, chokes on her own bodily fluids, and after all that, when she kicked our dad out of the house, she walks up to me and says, "I know you hate me," in this monotone with a hint of cockiness voice. Honestly, this isn't the first time she's done things exactly like this, She has kicked our dad out of the house because he was worried about his mom whilst her mom was in hospital. Both of my grandmas are very sickly, and was mad at us because we were upset that she kicked our dad out. This woman is very insane.